WPFW.
Okay, welcome to Heal DC. This is Joni, and we're going to be spending the hour in. Okay, let's hear our music for today. This is Joni with a new engineer here. We're spending the hour honoring a very special ancestor whose birthday is today, Kolonji Olusegun. And Tony Browder is with me for the hour. And if we have that music, let me know. Redemption song we selected to honor Kolonji, but let's just jump into it. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Joni. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm very glad you're with me. We have a very special treat for you this morning. Some of you may remember a very, very special ancestor who was with us here on WPFW and out in the community for many, many years. Today is Kolonji's 95th birthday, and we're going to be going over some of the highlights of his life. He was known as a Renaissance man, did many, many things. And perhaps we can start with Tony. Tony, would you like to share some of Kolonji's history or anything you'd like to say to start us off?
Well, for those people who have been listening to WPFW for more than 3 decades would be familiar with Kolonji's voice. He had this James Earl Jones baritone voice, and it was extremely pronounced. And whenever he spoke, like, what is that company, E.F. Hutton, whenever he spoke, he commanded your attention. And he had an air to him that equaled his voice, in that not only did his voice command your attention, but every time he spoke, he had something significant to say. And I was blessed to have listened to him on the airwaves of WPFW for a number of years before I actually met him. And then upon meeting him, he brought me into the WPFW circle, the WPFW community, and introduced me to several other hosts on the radio show, as well as a number of programmers. And we formed a study group, if you will. As a matter of fact, my fondest memories of Brother Kolonji is of him as the leader of the very first study group that I was a participant in. And it really laid the foundation for the work that I continue to do this very day. So I can't think of Brother Kolonji without thinking about how he impacted my life. And I'm honored to be on the air with you today, Joni, to celebrate his 95th birthday.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just read some notes, and then perhaps, Tony, you can give some more in-depth information. Kolonji, and both Tony and I were very close friends with Kolonji, as was many other members of the PFW family from different branches of the family. But Kolonji was born April 21st, 1930. He passed when he was 83 years old, I believe, in 2013. He was from New York City, and that was one connection that Kolonji and I had, me being from New York City as well. And I was very proud to learn that Kolonji worked with young people who were so-called youth gangs in New York City. He became a key person, deputy field director of New York City's Youth Board. And Kolonji sometimes shared some of those stories with us. He came to the DC area in the mid-1970s. And some of you may remember one of the very special things Kolonji did was, and Tony remembers it very clearly as well, something called morning readings theater. And he did that from about 1978 into the early 90s. And many longtime listeners of PFW remember Kolonji's powerful voice, Tony described, actually doing readings from books and very special materials. And some of the things that he read, The Destruction of Black Civilization, The Prophet, The Secret Life of Plants, and he would read the whole book. And Tony might remember, because I didn't know Kolonji at that time, but it always struck me, that voice and what he was reading. Can you just share a little bit for the listeners about what that was like, the morning readings that Kolonji did for so many years?
Sure. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he came on either at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
Yes.
So typically on PFW, you had Lauren Love at 9 o'clock and then Ambrose Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had morning reading. And morning reading was every day, every morning during the week. So you mentioned Kolonji would read several books, The Prophet or Destruction of Black Civilization. And Kolonji would read the entire book from cover to cover, however many days it took him to read the book. So you mentioned also that he read Destruction of Black Civilization. Now, Kolonji's reading of Destruction of Black Civilization was my first introduction to that book. And upon listening to him, I was just fascinated with the history that I was learning. And then I ultimately learned that Chancellor Williams lived in D.C., that he had taught at Howard, that he lived in an apartment building on 16th Street. So not only were we learning about African history, but we were also learning about living historians who were from the community, who Kolonji was introducing to us. And I would make it a point to listen to morning reading. I mean, that was one of my regular programs. No matter what I was doing, I would turn on morning reading and internalize this history or this knowledge that Kolonji shared with us. And so I saw him as a griot. I saw him as someone who was bringing the news to his community on a regular basis, so that after I met him and had a chance to know him pretty well, then I was able to make recommendations for books for him to read. And one of the books that I recommended to him that I was so pleased to hear on the air was a book written by Peter Tompkins and Christopher Boyd, a book called The Secret Life of Plants. And that book is significant for a couple of reasons. One reason is that there was a chapter in that book on the Dogon, and Stevie Wonder, in his album Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, Stevie Wonder, Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants was an album that served as a soundtrack to the film that I don't think it was released for a short period of time and didn't do well in the box office. But Stevie Wonder's soundtrack was an album where he toured the country with a full orchestra and played these songs that talked about plants, the secret relationship between plants and human beings. And there was a chapter in that book called The Wizard of Tuskegee that focused on George Washington Carver and detailed his life. Well, two things about the book and Stevie Wonder. On the album Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, there's a song that Stevie Wonder recorded at the FESCAT Festival of Arts and Culture Festival that was held in Nigeria, I believe, in 1977. And Stevie Wonder recorded a song live called A Seed is a Star is a Seed. And it was about the Dogon cosmology. And so that had me fascinated about Stevie Wonder, the mere fact that here's a man he was blind, but he was aware of the Dogon. He was aware of their association, their interest in the star Potolo and Sigitolo, the star system that we know today as Sirius A and Sirius B. and had sung this song in Africa about this very important festival that is related to the relationship of these two stars around each other and how this relationship maintains order in the universe. So I read the book, I referred it to Kolonji. He not only brought it to the airways of WPFW, and there was a coalition of other readers. There was Brother Kojo Olahunio, who also was a really eccentric personality, but a wonderful brother, really wonderful brother. And as they took turns reading Secret Life of Plants, there was a sister who was part of that collective, and I'm forgetting her name, but she not only read the chapter on George Washington Carver, the Wizard of Tuskegee, but she knew a professor who taught in the science department or the physics department at Howard University, who was a student of George Washington Carver at Tuskegee. And she integrated her interview with him into the reading of that chapter. So that's the quality and the level of scholarship, of history and culture that Kolonji brought with him to WPFW. And it made, his presence at the station so textured and so strong. He was one of the core anchors of WPFW. And so his presence there elevated the station. And you have to, remember, I want your listeners to remember, but WPFW came on the air in 1977. So it was new, playing jazz all the time. Plus you have someone like Kolonji and his cohort of readers reading books. So it was a new way of accessing information, of sharing information to a community that was starved for this truth. And that's one of my fondest memories of Kolonji,
yes,
his work at WPFW. I'm sorry for going on, Joni. So
no, that's
I'm rambling. Please jump in.
I'm going to jump in now because we could spend the whole day talking about Kolonji. So and pretty soon we're going to be hearing from Nkechi Taifa is going to be jumping in. But I just wanted to add a few things not related directly to his so-called political activities, which we're going to talk about with Nkechi in a moment. But other things, not only was Kolonji on the radio for so many years doing those beautiful morning readings, he also later served on the WPFW board, and not only the WPFW board, on the National Pacifica Board for many, many, many years. He was a close friend of mine, and of course Tony's as well. He was a very close friend of Brother Bays, who some of you still remember. And Kolonji and I used to take long trips up to one of Brother Bay's healers. And Kolonji was just so caring, always, for Brother Bay as he was going through his health challenges. Kolonji also served on the a very important organization in Ward 8, the Board of Family Medical and Counseling Services. I watched him and sometimes attended meetings of that board that he was on. Very, very important work. And he was a Renaissance man. He was and I think he was created, what's the word, Tony? His own clothing.
He was a tailor. He was a master tailor. And not only did he make his pants, his shirts, his vests, his coats, but he also created his own hats. I mean, this stuff was, he was something else. He truly was.
Yeah, yes, he was. He created his own hats. So he was truly a Renaissance man. And he was also, I'm not sure what word to use, but he was also a health guru. He was very, very into healthy eating, and he used to prepare these foods and give it out to people in need. He would tirelessly prepare these very special salads. I forget what it's called, Kolonji's Kitchen something, but he was a health guru.
Let me share a story about that. A personal eyewitness testimony. Kolonji, at some point when he was in his late 70s and early 80s, he began developing vitiligo.
That's right.
I think he had it on his hands and maybe other parts of his body. And I ran into Kolonji one day at Blue Now on Georgia Avenue, the herb shop on Georgia Avenue. And I looked at his hands and noticed, we shook his hands and greeted him and noticed that the vitiligo was gone. I said, Kolonji, what happened? He said, he came down to Blue Now, consulted with Dooku, and he created this compound that using herbs in which he was able to produce this ointment, which he rubbed on his hands that increased the melanin production in his skin and eradicated the vitiligo. This is how otherworldly Kolonji was. Just when you thought you knew the man, he then pulled another rabbit out of his hat and showed you another dimension of his personality. So
yes, he did.
Was multidimensional and
absolutely
and beautiful soul.
Yes. And Tony, as you know, this is a very perfect time to be talking about Kolonji, his 95th birthday, but also because this Friday, WPFW is celebrating our 48th anniversary. And hopefully some of you will be attending, but it's a great time to honor an ancestor like that, like Kolonji, as we're celebrating our 48th birthday. And I'm going to give one more health-related story, and then we're going to jump into all the other things that Kolonji did. As some people may remember, my show used to be almost exclusively focused on health, and we would bring in this natural vision healer from California who would come in and give workshops. And Dick Gregory would attend, and Brother Bay, and Kolonji was always there. He and I attended quite a number of these workshops. And one of the things that the vision person did was suggest that people walk backwards instead of as a way to strengthen your eyesight, walk backwards. Kolonji did that for years. Right outside of his home, he would walk backwards for blocks and blocks, and his vision improved. So again, Kolonji had many facets to his beautiful personality, and I'm thankful that I was close friends with him, as was Tony. We were there during his transition. I can remember it. There was quite a crowd of us there, Tony, maybe about 10 people. And we were there, of course, at his homegoing service at Plymouth with Reverend Hagler. And he is definitely a very important part of the WPFW community. Maybe we should jump in. I'm not sure if Nkechi is going to be coming on. So let's jump into her. And maybe if the...
Yes, I am on.
Oh, you're here. Okay, Nkechi. So glad you're with us.
Well, I'm thrilled to join this phenomenal conversation about our dear brother, Kolonji Olusegun.
Yes, and we can. So tell us about let's start maybe with Cobra, and then work our way through all the things that Kolonji did.
Yeah, well, my connection with Brother Kolonji far even predated in Cobra. I mean, I'm going to go back to St. Kitts, okay, because that's where his family is from. That's where my family is from. He comes from staunch Garveyites. I come from staunch Garveyites in terms of my grandfather. He was in Harlem. My mother's family was in Harlem. And then coming to D.C., I just remember early on, I'm talking about 70s now, when there used to be study sessions at his house. I don't remember.
Yes.
Euclid Street, Fairmont Street, something like that, off of 13th Street.
13th and Fairmont, right? Second house from the corner.
You got it.
Yes, and a lot
house.
of people came to that house.
Yeah, and I even remember before a Saracet Society became a Saracet Society, they used to have his name was Rostra, anyway, My brainish is gone dead. But to come to talk about vegetarianism and all of that was at Kolonji's house, the seeds of everything. In Cobra, the seeds for the reparations movement in DC through Kolonji, the seeds of the Republic of New Africa in DC through Brother Kolonji. So it was his health, it was his WPFW connections, but he was very much a community activist. He was a Garveyite. He was with the UNIA, the seeds of DC's UNIA, Brother Kolonji, just about every social issue, okay, that gained prominence here in this city, Brother Kolonji was the seed of, So
absolutely. Yeah. So Nkechi, let's go a little bit step by step, because as I'm always surprised what the younger audiences and even some of the older people don't know. We think people know things, but we're reaching a lot of different folks. National Coalition for Blacks for Reparations in America. Tell us about NCOBRA.
Yes, well, Kolonji was a founding member of NCOBRA, as I was, which was founded mid-September 1987 in Washington, D.C. He followed the call from Brother Mario Bubakari Obadeli, who was living in D.C. that time, that it was time to broaden and expand the reparations movement from the revolutionary fringe, which we were, to more mainstream, the sororities and fraternities, the churches, the social organizations, and the like. And Kolonji came up through social work, actually, in New York. I know he was responsible for the New York Youth Services and social work and all of that. So he brought all that to DC and really helped to expand the reach of the reparations movement beyond those of us on the revolutionary fringe, I guess you could say. So Kolonji was the first male co-chair of NCOBRA, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. He and his wife, our dear sister Kupenda Olusegun, were very much involved in helping to set the groundwork for the phenomenal escalation that we see today with respect to reparations all across the country. They were the seeds of much of that.
And Nkechi, let me just say, add to what you're saying. When we'll jump from NCOBRA to another activity, of course, UNIA, but this is one example. Kolonji spent over 20 years representing NCOBRA in Geneva at the Human Rights Convention. 20 years in Geneva. I didn't know that. So I'm sorry, Nkechi, anything else about NCOBRA? And then let's jump next to UNIA for a few minutes.
Yeah, just the thing that, again, he was the seed for just about everything, the internationalization, the globalization of the reparations movement. Kolonji was at the helm of just about everything. He was a mentor. He was a father figure. I just cannot. There's just so many accolades, many of which you and my dear brother Karak, Tony Browder, have already discussed previously.
Yeah. So, but let's keep going, because again, it's Kolonji embraces a lot of the history here in DC. That's very important. So let's talk about, for a minute or two, Kolonji being a founding member and trustee of the Banneker-Woodson Division of the UNIA. And of course, UNIA, that division is very proud of Kolonji. I can remember a special service they gave for him, and they still have a memorial page up for Kolonji. Anything, Tony or Nkechi, you want to say about Kolonji and Banneker-Woodson Division of the UNIA?
Well, I just want to say, generally, I'm going to turn it over to Tony. I just want to say he was a true Garveyite, and he came from a family of Garveyites as well. So he just carried on the tradition from his family, from his lineage, from his ancestors, and brought it to bear here in D.C. Take it away, Tony.
Yeah, well, Nkechi, you really hit the nail on the head when you identify Kolonji's Caribbean roots. His mother, Anasac Godwin Beckford, was from Jamaica, and his father, Joseph Godwin, was from St. Kitts, and both of them were Garveyites, and they lived in Harlem. So you take that combination of the Caribbean, race-conscious Africans moving from the Caribbean to Harlem, where Marcus Garvey, who briefly lived in Washington, D.C. I have a letter that I think Brother Senghor gave me this letter. When Garvey came from Jamaica to the United States, he was to meet with Booker T. Washington to map out a strategy for developing a broader race consciousness. But Washington died, and Garvey wound up settling in Washington, D.C. for a while, and he actually stayed at the Thurgood Marshall, what is now the Thurgood Marshall Center, what was known then in 1926 as the 12th Street YMCA. And I have a copy of a article that Garvey wrote that was published in a Washington newspaper in 1926, and the address for his residence was 1816 12th Street Northwest. So Garvey stayed at the 12th Street YMCA before he moved to Harlem and changed the world. So Kolonji comes out of this culturally conscious stew, if you will, where we had Africans from the Caribbean, Africans from the continent, Africans from throughout the United States migrating to Harlem. And this year, 2025, represents the 100th anniversary of the official beginning of the Harlem Renaissance, when Elaine Locke published a magazine, Survey Graphic, which introduced the new Negro and the concepts behind the Harlem Renaissance. So Kolonji was born in this culturally rich environment that shaped every facet of his life. And when he ultimately resettled to Washington, D.C., he brought that energy with him. And that energy was passed down to every organization that he either founded or worked with. And as a consequence, he touched the lives of tens of thousands of people, which is, I assume, the primary reason why we're honoring him today. You know, we can't forget this phenomenal spirit, because his energy, his consciousness, his power is needed more today than any point in recent history that I can think of.
Absolutely. You're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM. This is Joni with Trujillo, DC. We're spending this hour, a very special hour, in honor of our friend, our brother, Kolonji, who was born today, April 21st, 1930. Tony Browder is with us for the hour, and hopefully Nkechi can stay with us as well. I'm not sure if we're going to be playing any music today. Maybe not, but we can have music in our hearts and in our spirits. I'm not sure if we can take any phone calls. So I'm not sure I can. Okay, phone calls, yes. So if somebody wants to call in and speak or ask a question about Kolonji, the number is 202-588-0893. 202-588-0893. And I remember Kolonji talking about, of course, his parents and those magnificent parades in New York City. I think it was mostly in Harlem, that I believe his parents definitely participated in those huge parades among the Garveyites in New York City. Again, we are honoring Kolonji, very much part of our history, WPFW, a beautiful Renaissance person. In addition to everything else, as Tony said, very, very kind and caring person. He always had time to help somebody in need, especially his friends. And again, was very involved with WPFW, very involved with several other organizations. Tony, I don't know if there's anything you might want to read from his
homegoing program.
Yes, his
Sure.
homegoing program. And some of us, I think, Tony, you were there with us. We worked together for a couple of weeks, if not more, putting that program together. So we want to thank all the people who were involved in preserving that history.
Sure. Well, Joni, thank you for this opportunity to commemorate, my dear friend, my brother, and my Jegna. And let me just frame some of the comments that I'm going to share from his homegoing program. I recall vividly, I received a phone call from Brother Ah on January the 30th, 2013. And he told me that Brother Kolonji had a stroke and that he was in the hospital. He was in Seventh-day Adventist Hospital, and that he was, essentially brain dead, and that he was on life support, and his family was waiting for other family members to come visit him and say their goodbyes before they took him off of life support. So I jumped in my car and rushed down to the ICU unit, and I saw you there. Brother I was there, Brother Singor was there, Brother Bay was there, and others. And I remember, Joni, a group of us, as you mentioned previously, stood around his bed, held his hand, stroked his head. Brother I pulled out his flute. Sangor started a chant. Brother Bay chimed in with a chant. And for about a half an hour, we just serenaded this brother.
Yes.
We thanked him for the goodness that poured from his heart into this community. And I didn't realize it then, but we were paving the way for his soul to leave his body and begin its journey into the ancestral realm, where he would be greeted by so many other cultural warriors. And that moment, touched me, because that was the first time in my life I had ever been in the presence of someone as they made their transition. And being there allowed me to do the same thing for my mother 2.5 years later, and then do the same thing for Dr. Welsing 44 days after that. So, Kolonji has opened the door for me for so many levels. And yes, he is known as Baba to many people, but those of us who were, close to him, know him by many different names, and know him on many different levels. So I'm just speaking of my friend, from my heart to his. So please understand that. And as I was at my altar this morning, I have his program on my altar, so it was easy for me to grab that and review his life, to be able to share aspects of his life with you. But Joni, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I want to just say we have, I think, 1 or 2 callers on the line. So let's see if we can bring in some of the callers. Again, this is WPFW. We're honoring our dear Baba Kolonji, our dear brother, our dear friend. Caller, if you want to jump in and share your name, where you're calling from, and your comment or question. Let's see if we can make this work. We have a new engineer with us today. Shall we wait for the caller, or shall we move on?
Hello? I can hear now.
Good morning.
Awesome. Good morning. Good morning, Joni. Good morning, Karak.
Good morning.
Your name and where you're calling from.
I recognize this voice. This is another new engineer at WPFW, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, this is Cody calling from Upper Marlboro.
Oh, hello.
Hello. I'm just taking in all the information on Baba Kolonji, and I never got to meet him. But I'm just wondering, as a young person who is, finding my grounding in this work, what ways can I honor his essence? What ways can I take these into my life now? How can I take the work that he's done and further it?
That's a beautiful question. I'm going to give a short answer, but I'm going to turn it over to Tony because I think he'll have a lot to say. But having met you once, Cody, you are already embodying Kolonji's spirit, because you worked with some of us, PFW programmers, as we were doing a special recording, and your kindness and your caring about what we were doing was quite striking. So I'm very glad to meet you, and we look forward to meeting you more. But Tony, what would you suggest? What would you say?
I would say use Brother Kolonji's life as a model for your life. That is, to be involved in your community, to be concerned about your health and the well-being of others around you, and to not be afraid to explore life. I'm looking at Brother Kolonji's homegoing program, and there's a poem in there that I'd like to share that I think speaks to Brother Cody's question about what we can do. And it's a very short poem, one that was written on the 10th of October, 1964. So these are words that came from the mind of Brother Kolonji back when he was known as Vince Godwin. And this poem is called Thinking Black on It All. He says, I think black, and that I think is the way I think. Black is where from which I look out. Black is the warmth from which I reach out. Black is the labyrinth from which I perceive. Black is the fullness from which I summon. Black is the depth in which I cry. Black is the breath from which I shout or whisper out. Black is where I am that I am. So I can help to think black on it all. So at a time when we're dealing with the erasure of things black, we need to be blacker than black, blacker than ever before. And we need to understand it's more than just the color of one's skin. It is a consciousness. It is a state of mind. And when you are centered in that state of mind, it's a state of mind that also transcends melanin, if we really understand the essence, the spiritual essence of what blackness is. And so we can honor Kolonji by calling his name and expanding on the things that he did. So being of service to WPFW is one way that you can honor him, helping to financially support this radio station as it celebrates its 48th year of broadcasting. If we want to ensure that it's here for 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, it's going to require multiple spirits like Brother Kolonji to be involved on multiple levels to make sure that the station is secure, to make sure that this community is secure, to make sure that the Black people and oppressed people throughout this country and around the world are secure, so that our voices will continue to be heard. So in lifting up Brother Kolonji, we are lifting up the voices of sisters and brothers around the world who stand on something important, something valuable, something worth sacrificing your life for.
Absolutely. Again, we are honoring Brother Kolonji. Yes, go on, Nkechi.
Yeah, I just want to also add to look into the issues that were near and dear to Baba Kolonji's life, issues dealing with reparations, issues dealing with the independent Black nation state right here on this soil, issues dealing with spirituality, issues dealing with the upliftment of Marcus Garvey and Africa for the Africans, those at home and abroad, up you mighty race. All of those things, all of those issues and so many more that was so very near and dear to Baba Kolonji's heart, in which he worked tirelessly his entire life up until his last breath look at some of those issues and see what just fits into your own life as well.
Yeah. Okay, we have another caller waiting. Caller, jump in, your name, comment, where you're calling from.
Yes, I'm calling from Upper Marlborough, and I have an emotional attachment to Baba Kolonji Olusegun. It was through him that my son, Lumumba, which is Nongchi, I get to know quite a number of things. And this was through another gentleman we used to call Baba Kwasi. He was the one who introduced Lumumba to Baba Kolonji, and Baba Kolonji became his mentor. He was Lumumba's mentor. And I remember because of the influence of Baba Kolonji, there was a program in 2017 where Donald Trump was telling 4 of our sisters who were challenging some of the policies he was advocating then in his first year. So he was saying if they did not like his policy, they should go back to where they came from. And Lumumba was sitting with me and we were watching the program. He said, well, you are from Germany. Your mother is from Britain. Now, if you don't like what they are doing, why don't you go back to what the sisters were saying? Why don't you go back to Germany? Okay. Now, this is my feeling here. If anybody can help me have contact with Baba Kwasi, because Baba Kwasi was the one who introduced Lumumba to.
Did we lose you?
I think so. I think he was cut off. Yes.
Oh dear. Sorry. So I'm not sure if you, Tony, got the gist of what he was saying. I was waiting for him to finish that thought. I think I remember this young man that Kolonji was close to.
No, I'm not familiar with him, but Joni, if you don't mind, I'd like to share some comments that were shared in Brother Kolonji's homegoing program.
Yes, please do.
From 2 colleagues of his from New York. Dr. James Turner, who was the founding director and chair emeritus of the Africana Studies and Research Center at Cornell University. He came out of Harlem. And Baba Lenny Dunstan, who was the former director of the New York State Division of Youth and President Emeritus of the National Association of Black Social Workers. And Black Social Workers included the National Convention last week. So they wrote a paragraph about Kolonji, and I really would like to read it, share it with the audience, because it really speaks to his essence from 2 brothers who knew him and knew him well. They stated that Kolonji Olusegun is the epitome of the unsung hero. He is always there, getting the work done, but not always the one receiving the spotlight. We met Kolonji, then known as Vince Godwin, during the early 1960s in our first jobs as social workers in the New York City Youth Board, where he was our boss. Kolonji was a serious, disciplined brother who had graduated from Lincoln University. We respected his intelligence and often spent time after work talking with him about the struggles of the day. Although he was very clear about his expectations of us, he looked after us and covered our back when we engaged in more radical endeavors. As a result, we gave him 110% so he would not be compromised as our supervisor. We introduced him to Malcolm X, who was living in East Elmhurst at the time, and Kolonji was turned on to Brother Malcolm's teachings. Decades later, we worked with Kolonji in Cobra, the reparations movement. We will never forget the impact, guidance, and role Brother Kolonji had on our young lives in New York and the upward trajectory he sparked in our careers. We will never forget our Jagna. Now, this comes from 2 brothers who are giants in the social work field, giants in the field of education. So when I spoke earlier about Baba Kolonji shaping the consciousness of tens and thousands of people, that was not an exaggeration. So it's important that we understand who we had in our presence here in Washington, D.C. and on WPFW, and whose spirit is still accessible to us. And to have the honor today on his 95th birthday to lift his name up, to introduce his name, his legacy, his works to brothers like Cody and others who never knew the man, but the mere fact that we're talking about him and we're expressing, deep felt appreciation, heartfelt appreciation, helps those listeners who didn't know him understand the importance of service. Another son of Harlem, Dr. John Henry Clark, often said that service is the highest form of prayer, right? And so this service transcends your religious differences. It transcends your economic differences. It transcends your political expressions or your cultural expressions. Yeah. It's something that comes from the heart. And this brother was 100% heart, and the heart was the seat of the soul.
Absolutely.
And his soul is expressing itself through us remembering him at this hour.
Yes, absolutely. We, I think, have two more callers. We're going to take both of them real quick because we are running out of time. The caller, if you can jump on and say your name and your question.
Hello, how you doing?
Great. What's your name?
My name is Charles.
Charles!
Brother, hey, how you doing, Joni? I was going to talk about Brother Kolonji, a dark-skinned brother, but he wound up getting vitiligo, which turns the skin white.
Yeah, we talked about that, yeah.
And what happened was I saw him one day and his skin was turning back to its natural tone. And I asked him, what did he do? And he said, I just followed my herbalist's advice. I said, but what exactly did you do? He said, well, I took more vitamin D. I sunbathed on top of my roof in the apartment he was in. And he took some something from Chinatown called octopus dye. And that was a part of it. But what he did, he transformed himself.
Right.
He did whatever would take to transform his skin. But not just his skin, his mind and his spirit was transformed. And it transformed everybody around him, like myself. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the brother for the transformation.
Thank you, Charles Owens. Let's see if we can jump to the last and final caller real quick.
Yes. Yeah, I got cut off. I didn't get the request I made about Baba Kwasi that actually introduced my son Lumumba to Baba Kolonji, and he became a mentee of Baba Kolonji. If I can have contact with Baba Kwasi.
Well, if you can leave your number with the engineer, we'll try to hook you up.
Okay, transfer me there. Okay, I will leave my number. I will leave my number with him.
Yes, very good. And on top of everything else, I think has come through how Kolonji was extremely kind. He was a very kind man. He cared about people, and he went out of his way to show that kindness and caring. He was very sensitive. So again, he was a Renaissance man, many parts to Kolonji. We're glad we could share him today. There was this kind of a last minute change, and I'm glad that Tony Browder jumped in. I'm glad that Nkechi was able to jump in, and I think we have time for a minute from each of you. Nkechi, let's start with you.
Well, I just want to say real quick, that voice of Baba Kolonji Olusegun, that powerful, strong voice was just so very mesmerizing, and it graced the airways of WPFW and those morning meetings. I just want to say that voice. Yes.
Yes, and anything he said. Maybe we will be able to get some of those recordings someday and share them on the air. But a very, very powerful voice, not only for the morning readings. He used to come on with me, talk about healthcare issues. And just that voice was amazing. Tony.
Brother Kolonji was also a metaphysician. He was the first person I knew to talk about the I Ching. He was the first person I knew who talked about Ifa. He was a master astrologer. And I remember walking upstairs in his house to the attic where we used to have our study group sessions. He painted astrological signs on the steps and stars on the steps.
Yes.
Artist, right? But what was amazing, I knew the brother, for a number of years and thought I knew him, but it wasn't until we were at his homegoing service that I found out that he also was an inventor who had a on a amphibious automobile. Now, my mind was just blown. Here I thought I knew this brother, but there's so many layers to him. And I see, Joni, we have a message that Von Martin is on the line.
Oh, so okay, great. Von Martin, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Joni. I must compliment you on doing what you're doing, because oftentimes I remember of my old good friends like Askia and Kolonji and so on, and I just wanted to say that this man was such a nice man, kind, gentle, and he was always complimentary and offered support to me and my work and my team and what we were doing, He admired what we were doing, and he expressed his admiration by communicating with us and letting us know, offering us support, And so I just wanted to share that because he's one of those that I miss a lot, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm proud to say that Von Martin is going to be receiving a special award Friday night. As people may know, he was the first person to jump on the airwaves, would take the A train. And I'm just going to say, we love Von Martin. So I'm very happy Von called in just now. And anything, we maybe have one more minute left, but let's make a pledge, Tony. We're going to do whatever we can to try at some point in time to share Kolonji's voice. I know there are recordings around. I want to also thank Kapinda, Kolonji's wife. I know she has some recordings, but we're going to continue to keep Kolonji's spirit alive and well on WPFW.
Indeed, Joni, and thank you so much for this opportunity to serve as your co-host. And Nkechi, thank you as well for opening the door and making sure that my voice was heard on a weekly basis on WPFW. And it was great seeing you Saturday.
Yeah. And I'll see both of y'all hopefully at WPFW's anniversary this Friday. I'm looking
this Friday night. We'll probably still have some tickets available. Tony had picked out a beautiful song so we can think about it in our spirits. Pharaoh Saunders, Gotta Have Freedom. We had that picked out to share with you today, as well as Bob Marley's Redemption Song, which was requested by Kolonji's beautiful wife, Kapinda. But we are thankful that Kolonji lives. Kolonji is present with us today and always. We wish him a very happy 95th birthday, where he was born right there in New York City, and he's still here with us in Washington, D.C. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Nkechi. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the engineer, Robert. And I will be back in a second hour, but we won't be talking about Kolonji then, but we will keep him in our hearts and our spirits forever.
Thank you, Joni. Thank you, Tony.
All right. Peace.
Thank you. Peace.
There are voices still calling across the years, and they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free, one of us are chained, none of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel for each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. Now I swear your salvation isn't too hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We've got to join together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that every soul who's suffering will know that we're not alone. Oh, none of us are free. None of us are free, y'all. None of us are free, and one of us are chained. None of us are free. If you just look around you, you're gonna see what I say. 'Cause the world is getting smaller each passing day. Now it's time to start making changes, and it's time for us all to realize that the truth is shining bright right before our eyes. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free, and one of us is chained. None of us are free. Oh, none of us are free. Oh, my. None of us are free. No, none of us are free. One of us is chained. One of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. The one of us is chained. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. No. None of us are free. One of us is chained. Oh, none of us are free. Oh, no. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free.
WPFW Washington.
Okay, you maybe want to call the guest that was supposed to be on. Am I on the air now? Okay, welcome to a second hour with me, Joni. This is 11 o'clock hour, I want to thank Katia Stitt, our program director, for giving us this extra hour for a little while, as we will eventually transition into a new show at 11 a.m. Now that Monday Morning Quarterback is no longer on the air, we're going to be having a new show at some point in time. But I'm thankful to have this extra hour for a little while so we can bring you additional information. Before we introduce this hour, I want to make sure I make two announcements. We were originally going to spend this past hour discussing the Wednesday evening. Last Wednesday was DC Emancipation Day, and a number of organizations, including WPFW, sponsored DC Emancipation Day Speak Out at the Metropolitan AME Church of Frederick Douglass, and more. Sponsored by not only PFW, but two unions, Federal Unionist Network, the Metropolitan Washington AFL-CIO, Harriet's Wildest Dreams, Free DC, Washington Informer, and PFW. We were going to spend a lot of the hour that we just had speaking about this, but I made a last minute shift to dedicate the hour to our dear beloved Ancestor Kolonji. So we will be bringing you information about that Speak Out that happened last Wednesday. We may be able to play some of the sound in the near future, hopefully next weekend. I also wanted to mention and ask people to stay tuned today at 2 p.m. Dr. Watkins is going to be having a very special guest talking about Black farmers and an important event happening this Sunday, April 27th, in honor of Black women, a special tea party with Michelle Tingling Clemens. And if you stay tuned at 2 p.m., you're going to hear all about that special gathering at the Josephine Butler building near Malcolm X Park this coming Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So with that said, we're going to jump right into one of our two topics for this hour. I'm very glad to introduce Meagan Hastings with the National Coalition for the Homeless. We're going to be talking a little bit about a very important rally happening tomorrow and some of the challenges the homeless are facing, particularly in DC, but also around the country. And then a little later in the hour, we're going to be speaking with Ron Hampton, who's going to be talking about reimagining the police, and also reimagining the police during these days of Trump, when Trump has his own ideas, how he wants to reimagine the police. That'll be later in the hour. But first, I want to welcome Meagan with the National Coalition for the Homeless. Meagan, start out by introducing yourself a little better than I just did.
Oh,
welcome.
Thank you, Joni. Thanks for having me today. So you did just fine. My name is Meagan Hastings. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Deputy Director of the National Coalition for the Homeless. We are the oldest national homeless advocacy group. We are based in DC, but we work all across the country. And we're here today specifically to talk about our Housing Now Day of Action, which is happening tomorrow. We can get into the reasons why it's on April 22nd. But we have a rally planned for DC from 11 to 1 on the west lawn of the Capitol building. And we also have about 32 actions across the country happening tomorrow as well.
Wow, 32 actions. So before we jump into tomorrow, just give us a little bit more about the National Coalition for the Homeless. I remember back in the day that PFW, there were years when we were very closely connected with you during, I think, this time of the year. But share a little bit more about your organization.
Of course, thanks. So the National Coalition has been around since the 80s for a little while. That was when we started to really see massive increases in the number of people who are unhoused. And it was because of defunding housing and services, other community services that kept people housed in their communities. We have always been rooted in the lived experience of homelessness. Our leadership has always been at least partially representative of the group of people who have experienced homelessness, and we definitely take our direction from that direct experience with homelessness. We've always also focused on the root causes of homelessness. There's so many issues that impact people, everyday people, in many different ways, but at the root of it all, we have not invested in housing that's affordable for everyone, affordable and safe and accessible for everyone. We have relied on a system of modifying housing and other basic needs that, as we can attest by just this organization still being here 40, almost 50 years later, the private market is not going to end homelessness. We need to be investing more in housing. It's the root of all of homelessness. And then there's a lot of other things that come up for people. There's all kinds of reasons why people become homeless. Medical debt is one of the big reasons that we don't always realize. And it's not just people who you might see who are very visible in the street. It's families, it's people who are working. Housing is getting more and more and more unaffordable for all of us.
Absolutely.
So
that's exactly
unfortunately.
Right. So we're going to I'm going to ask you to talk about this rally tomorrow, and then we're going to dig a little deeper too about what is specifically happening in DC these days with regards to the homeless, and how our so-called president is impacting that situation. But let's focus a little bit tomorrow. The rally starts at what time?
We're going from 11 to 2. And again, it's on the west lawn of the Capitol, like between the Capitol reflecting pool. There's a few monuments, but just on the west lawn of the Capitol building.
So for those of us who take the metro, what metro stops would be near?
I believe the closest metro stops are going to be Union Station or Capitol South, and then just a few blocks in towards the mall.
Okay, and so that is tomorrow from 11 to 2. Why did you choose April 22nd?
We chose it for a very specific reason. Last year on April 22nd, a lot of us were in front of the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court was hearing arguments in the Johnson versus Grants Pass case. This case comes out of Oregon, Grants Pass, Oregon, and the plaintiffs were alleging that the city was using cruel and unusual punishment on people who are unhoused because folks are being ticketed and fined and jailed simply for sleeping outdoors and not having anywhere to go. So unfortunately, it made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, the decision came out in June of last year. But ultimately, the Supreme Court decided in favor of the city and said that it wasn't cruel and unusual punishment to fine and ticket and jail people for having nowhere else to go and having to sleep outdoors. So we were at a rally. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Oh, I could go on for ages.
Well, I'm just wondering what happens to the people now if they're ticketed, and where do they go?
Wherever they can. A lot of people go to jail. Quite honestly, these are folks who are staying outdoors because they literally have nowhere else to go. Do we think that these are folks who can pay thousands of dollars in fines, who are reachable to be able to get notices of court dates and, go to courts? No. I mean, this is why we very much support the plaintiffs, and we're very upset that the Supreme Court decided in favor of the city, because it's absolutely immoral to think that it's okay and it's not cruel to fine and ticket people who are already down on their luck and have nowhere else to go. This is, for us, this is not the country that we live in. This is not the kind of society that we are.
I'm sorry to say,
Sure.
unfortunately, this is the society that we are. So unless we organize, and as what you're doing tomorrow will be part of it, the importance of mobilizing the community. So,
Yes.
what are some of the well, just briefly, what you hope to focus on, or why is it important for people to come out tomorrow? And then we can talk about specifically what are some of your fears or concerns may happen as we continue to move forward in this era of we call him the Orange President. So what are your goals for tomorrow's rally?
Yeah, well, just like you said, it's very important. I think the majority of us, yes, this is the type of society that we are living in currently, where people can be thrown in jail for having nowhere to sleep, being brown, having a foreign sounding name. Like, there's all kinds of silly, stupid reasons that people are being thrown in jail or being attacked. But it's not, I don't think it's the society that most of us want to live in. So that for that reason, it is really important for as many of us as possible to get out, to speak up. We specifically want to be talking about housing tomorrow, but it's housing tomorrow. It's nonprofits the next day. It's Medicaid the next day. It's food assistance the next day. Like, there's so many things that are being attacked right now. That it's very, very important for all of us to stick together and to keep repeating, hey, this is not the world that we want to live in. This is not the world that, this country was meant to be. Maybe it was, there's arguments about that, where we came from, or colonialist project. But is that really where we want to live? Like, we can create the society that we want to live in, but we have to be active. We have to be working with our friends and our family and our neighbors to make it happen. We can do it, but we have to do it together.
Absolutely. And there is a lot going on. I wasn't able to announce it, but there's a new strategy called the Solidarity Cities that you're going to be hearing more about on WPFW. So there are new strategies being inactive, and there are rallies almost every day here in the DC area. Yes. So tell us, in the few minutes we have left, what are some of your concerns, perhaps, about how Mayor Bowser has been handling this homeless situation? And also, what are your concerns about this so-called president, what he might do in the future?
Yeah, well, affordable housing has been shrinking in the district for a long time. This mayor has definitely shown in many different ways that she is more interested in funding developers than ensuring that people have access to safe and affordable housing. We've also seen, especially recently, but throughout the mayor's terms, criminalization of homelessness, people being fined, arrested, ticketed, pushed around the city, displaced simply for having nowhere to go. The city sometimes says that there's enough shelter beds for everyone, but there's really not. If you start to look into the type of shelter, who it's for, there are a certain number of beds who are for families. There's a certain number of beds that are only open during weather emergencies or when it's very cold. There's always time limits. You can only be in a certain shelter for 30, 60, 90 days before you have to leave and come back. Like, there's all kinds of things that prevent people from accessing shelter. And in the end, it's not really shelter that we need, it's housing. But even the people who are lucky enough to get some kind of housing assistance, a voucher, whether it's city or federal, also struggle a lot to find a landlord that would be willing to rent to them, or that is providing, again, a safe and accessible home. There's so many homes, both in the private and public sector, that are in disrepair, are, dangerous to live in. There's mold, there's vermin, there's all kinds of problems, the water, and there's so many units of housing that are not up to code, but that people are forced to take because that's the only place that maybe only a landlord would take their voucher, or there's so many stresses, and I think the things there's many things that are going to get worse with the current administration. I am a representative of my organization. We're a 501c3. So we are not partisan in any way, but this administration is definitely making it much worse. And even going back to the case, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot, the Supreme Court case, which is the reason that we're doing this action tomorrow, there's been at least 150 new laws that have criminalized people for being homeless across the country since that decision was made in June. 150 new laws have been enacted across the country that say you can't sleep here, you can't rest, you can't sit down, you can't feed people in this area. All the while, people are losing their jobs, especially federal workers right now in the DC area. There's been so many jobs eliminated or threatened right now in the DC area. We are going to have representatives from the Federal Workers Union at the rally tomorrow.
Good.
And then just people who are forced to then sleep out on the streets are being displaced constantly. Their things are being thrown out. They're being told they can't be in a certain place, even though a lot of times people congregate together because it's safer for people who are forced to live outdoors to be in a community versus on their own where they could be attacked by, anyone that is a little upset and wants to get out their rage.
Yes. And I used to be much more aware of what the city was doing. I know at our speak out last week, we had an activist, homeless advocate, Eric Sheptok, and he brought a homeless woman, a blind woman, who in a wheelchair, and was attempting to get support from the city, and apparently it just wasn't happening. So if that's happening on the city level, unfortunately, I can kind of imagine under this president how much worse things could get for the homeless. I don't choose to actually describe it because we have to do whatever we can to make sure that doesn't happen. But we do need to know, and I think many of us do know, that as bad as things are, things can still get much worse, especially for vulnerable communities. And so that's why we have to stick together. We have to work together. And tell us, and we only have a few more minutes left, but I back in the day, I worked quite a bit with the homeless communities in DC, and I remember the children. Talk to us a little bit about the homeless children that we don't really hear about enough.
It's a tough one. The community of people who experience homelessness is just as varied as our communities at large. Families, people who are working, experience homelessness just as much as individuals or single people do. And children have it even worse because you can't learn at school if your belly is not full, if you're hungry, if you're tired, you haven't had a good night's sleep. And families that, while the city has tried, they have built some family shelters since they closed the big one that was on the St. Elizabeth's campus. Those have been way slower to go up than the city originally said that they would. There's been a lot of NIMBYism, the not in my backyard neighborhood saying, oh, we don't want this in our neighborhood, even though there's study after study that shows that shelters don't cause, drops in property rates and all this stuff. But, I have a child who goes to a Title I school in the district, and this current administration, with the budget, Congress has asked the city, has told the district that they have to cut $1 billion from the district's budget. And that's terrifying. That's a terrifying amount of money. One that causes all kinds of issues with home rule. These are Congress people that are coming in with all kinds of crazy ideas to our city and telling us how to run things. There's already a problem with that has a long history, but also what's going to end up being cut is those Title I schools, those rare places where kids who do struggle can get fed with no questions asked. They have the supports they need in that school to be able to learn and move to the next level. There's the liaisons that help coordinate housing. These are all things that this current administration is threatening, not just in DC, but across the country. And so there's the loss of food assistance. There's anytime that this administration says that they want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, it's an absolute lie. It's just a lie.
Yes.
There is no fraud and abuse in these systems that are keeping people alive. That everyday people across the country, we all rely on these systems, to make our daily to meet our daily needs, and to take care of our kids, and to take care of our families, and to take care of our communities.
Yes. Yeah. And Meagan, I'm going to move on in a moment to our next guest.
Of course.
You're reminding me of back in the 80s. I can remember going into a shelter every day for months. 700 children in that shelter. And we had to fight to get them into schools. Luckily, I don't think there's a shelter like that anymore with the 700 children, but I'm sure there's still far too many homeless children.
Yeah, we've made advances. We've made advances over the years, but they're all threatened. Everything is threatened right now, so we really need the solidarity.
So say one more time where the rally is tomorrow.
Yes, and please meet us. Housing Now rally, April 22nd, on the west lawn of the Capitol, near 3rd Street, near the Capitol Reflecting Pool. We really hope you all are there. It's 11 to 2, and then we're actually going to have a community meal and a film screening at the Lutheran Church of the Reformation on East Capitol Street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joni.
Meagan Hastings, and again, that she's with the National Coalition for the Homeless. I'm sure you can find information about what they do on their website. Okay, Meagan, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Joni. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, and we have this hour some imaginary music, but we also have a real wonderful next guest who is by no means imaginary. He's going to be live and in person, and that is none other than Ron Hampton, who is no stranger to these airwaves. And Ron's going to talk about a number of things, including reimagining policing. I'm going to ask Ron to introduce himself, but I would just like to share, as a longtime listener to WPFW, first hearing Ron in the 1980s. So inspiring. He was on frequently with Askia and many others. He's still out there trying to organize for a better world. So welcome, Ron Hampton.
Yeah, Joni. Joni, how you doing?
Yes, good. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning to you and the WPFW family. Just glad to be with you, Joni. Glad to be with you.
And I'm happy that you're. So Ron, tell us, because I didn't have time to write down all your official history, but of course I know it. So tell us how you started out real quick with being in the police, and then you took on another very special hat.
well, Joni, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I love D.C. In Southeast. My family's here, my brothers and sisters here. I served on the police department along with I was in the service and all of that. But I served on the police department, and it was a challenge because it was a particular time when, when I first went on, Black folk only represented about 19% of the police force in a city that was well over 50% of Black folk. And a lot of those people came from other places. rural areas and whatnot. So they didn't have a great deal of respect for the people who lived here, who looked like me, and the communities that they came from, and that was really an issue. I had met my Waterloo to say when I was in the service, and I just refused to accept certain neglectful behavior, I call it, and the name calling and whatnot. So by the time I got to the police force, I was ready, and it wasn't my lifetime dream to be a police, but I ended up being a police officer, and I also understood what it was that being a police meant in this city and in my home. And so I often used to say that the real power that police had was the power to improve the quality of people's life, not the power of arrest. So that's how I went about doing my job. And then I was fortunate enough to serve as the head of the Black Police Association here in D.C., as well as the executive director of the National Black Police Association. So by the time
and Ron, what were those years? I remember that, I believe, in the 80s. So just share
yes, ma'am.
us the time frame.
I went on in 1971, and then I retired in 1994. And during those, I served. I also served as the president of Black Police Association. There's some of the old guys, some of them are not around now, who was also members of the organization. And then we went on to join the National Black Police Association in 1974, 75. And so again, it wasn't something that was unique to Washington, D.C. It was happening all over the country, and Black police organizations and their members were, speaking out, asking for equality, asking for equal rights when it came to positions, when it came to assignments, when it came to the kind of things. At one time in this country, Black police officers couldn't work in white communities. They couldn't even ride in cars. So, it was a kind of situation that needed to be addressed and handled, and it wasn't done willingly either. We protested, but we also won a lot in court because we had to go to court. And it was just that we had allies in the Justice Department and some of the other regulatory agencies like Equal Opportunity Commission and all of those. But it was they were challenging times. But it has also, some of the recent stuff has also caused us to rethink.
Yes. And before we get into the present more, I just want to take some listeners back into the past. And if you can share with us, Ron, some of the inspiring and important interviews you had with people like Askia Muhammad. And this is a good time because it's, we're celebrating our 48th anniversary. And talk a little bit about Askia, but the other wonderful, important hosts such as Petey Green on other stations.
Oh my God! I came along, Joni, at a time where I met those guys. I met Petey Green. I met him. I met him in the community over in Southeast on Minnesota Avenue at a friend of mine.
And remember, there are some people don't know who Petey Green is, so just tell us in a sentence.
Petey Green was this very colorful, formerly incarcerated character who had radio, was on TV, but Petey was very smart, very, very smart. And he even rigged developed a plan for him to get out of Lawton. He was down in Lawton, and he was down there during the period of time when Lawton was open. But Petey Green was this character. Roach Brown reminds me of Petey because Roach is very, very, very creative, very smart, and then took that talent and stuff that they had and then turned it into the need to talk to people and utilizing the media in the kind of way. Roach was incarcerated and he was working every day at a radio TV station doing media. These guys are just fantastic, and I'm better today because I met them when I was coming up. But the Black media and WHUT, WPFW, a lot of some of the Black reporters and them that I know in the city now. Some have retired, some have gone on home. Gave us a chance. They gave us the opportunity to talk and hear what our issues were in law enforcement and in the department here in the city. And so there's a debt of thankfulness that we owe them, that the Black Police Association owed them. WPFW, Askia Muhammad. I must have been interviewed a million times by Askia Muhammad. He would come seek me out because he knew that I was going to just tell it like it was. And I did. I just told it like it was. Having those conversations and doing the things that we were doing in the Black Police Association didn't endear a whole lot of white people to us. But shit, they wasn't endeared to us in the first place. Yeah, and they didn't give us the job. You better bet. We took the test, we passed the test, and then we had to pass the other test when we got on the job. So it was well worth it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But those were challenging times.
Yes, and let me just jump in for a quick minute and say, when I was just a listener, I wasn't on the air, and I can remember you coming on with Askia. It was so inspiring. I'll never forget it. I'll never ever. That's one of the highlights I have of WPFW. How it was inspiring to hear you, Ron Hampton, with Askia. So we thank you.
You remember Gloria Monarch? Gloria,
of course.
I was even interviewed a couple of times with Gloria and some of the folks. WPFW has really been ally of ours in our struggle. So anytime anybody from WPFW, says something to me or asks me to do something or the work that we're doing, I'm more than glad to accommodate. Truly, I am. And we owe them a great deal because of the access. WHTU, Kojo Namdi and the brother that's over there now, his name escapes me, but the staff, it's just been Renee Nash, some of them old names from the past. Yeah, they really helped us in terms of getting our message out. And it made our struggle just a little bit easier because we had allies in the media to help us.
Absolutely. And just for people who don't know, Gloria Minot for many, many, many years was the program director. And we're very proud of Gloria that we haven't heard from her, but she's still with us. So
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes. So, and again, this is a good time because we are celebrating our 48th birthday. And soon we're going to be walking into the half-century celebration. But so let's jump now, Ron. We could go on and on talking about Petey Green, but because I have fond memories of him as well on the radio.
That's right.
Which I'm not going to go into because it'll take time. But let's jump into the present now. I've heard you talk about reimagining policing, and I want you to share a little bit with the listeners what that is, but then also, and you can do reimagining first, but also come back to how this so-called president is reimagining policing and how we have to organize around that, his vision.
Yeah.
So
for us, it came to us in the conversation about getting, moving out of policing, cutting budgets and all those kind of things. And the fact of the matter is the smart thing to do is abolition is what I'm talking about. But the smart thing to do is to look at it from the standpoint we believe in terms of analyzing it. If it doesn't work, then why do it? And if you take something from a public or community that they've been used to, then you also have to think about what are you going to replace it with, because they're entitled to it. Law enforcement in this country is something that tax dollars pay for. My service was and my retirement is being funded by the tax dollars of this city and the people who live here, who include me. But the fact of the matter is, we can have a better system, and that's what we're talking about. We're looking at, and believe it or not, it's taking place in some of the cities and states that we, at the present time, in terms of the handling of calls that are related to a mental health episode. When a person is having a mental health episode, we think mental health professionals ought to be responding. When young people are involved in the kind of things that they get involved in because they're young folk and make rash decisions, then there ought to be professionals that handle those. Because the police talk about arresting them and locking them up, and that's not the answer to the situation. Domestic violence is a very touchy thing. And most of the time, by the time it comes to the attention of the police when the neighbors call, it's at a heightened situation, and it should have been handled a long time ago. And then there are resources. And how do we know or access those resources is that we need to have professionals. So those are the kind of things that we're talking about. Because the truth of the matter is America isn't going to be without the police or law enforcement, just like they aren't going to be without the Army. So the reality is we talk about reimagining. What should it look like in a way that it's designed to help us do what it is that we need in our community to address those issues? And the communities can do it. One of our friends, Tyrone Parker, who spent many years at the Alliance of Concerned Men and still working in our community, has this a saying. He says that sometimes the solution is in the problem. And the problem is that those things happen in our community, and we have resources in our community that we can use to address those situations without calling the police, so that when a legitimate police issue comes up, then the police can handle that. But we can back them out of some of the things that's happening in our community and in our society, and do it in the kind of way to apply the real solutions to it, not something temporary. Because even if the police going to help you, they're going to refer you to it. So why go around the bar when we can go straight in the door? And that's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about reimagining. And there's some other academic kind of things that go along with it, but it's just not something that you throw at people. You have to hand walk people and talk about it and educate them about the process, and then talk about some of the examples that's going on in our country as it relates to the response to those situations without the police. Now, if they need the police, for example, responding to mental health issues, then the professionals can evaluate the situation and call the police. But most of the time, the police aren't needed because they can handle it. They're educated and trained to do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in because I want to make sure you get to a few things before we run out of time. So I believe there are a few places where the reimagining police has taken a few steps forward. And if I'm not mistaken, perhaps one of those places is Newark, New Jersey.
Newark, New Jersey. Yeah, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, kudos to him. He was faced with hiring, let me back up. He was faced with bringing additional individuals into the law enforcement community up there. And what he decided to do was to hire 2 police officers, but for every 2 police officers he hired a social worker. And that makes good sense, because what it is that the social workers, the professionals, are dealing with those issues and assisting the police, and they've had great success with it. And there's also community-based organizations that with professionals that are working along with him, and they've seen some tremendous and significant reductions in crime, serious crime, violent crime, and then also just the everyday kind of stuff. But the communities and the people who are doing this work are very excited about it, as well as the results. There are places on the West Coast, in Portland and Seattle, Washington, where they're using mental health professionals to respond to those issues, and they get their instructions directly from the communication division rather than from the police. And so they get a chance to go in and they do an evaluation. There are things going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they're doing those kind of things. And it really makes a difference in terms of the results.
Yes, and we have about 10 more minutes left, so I want to just jump back to Newark for a second, because the mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, the son of Amiri Baraka, very connected to us here in Washington, D.C., a Howard graduate. Tom Porter, our past program director, is very close with Rod.
A friend that you introduced me to, Larry Ham, and all of them, they're part of that.
Yes. So, Ron, one of the dreams and thoughts I had is someday, and you can help make this happen on PFW, it would be great to have you and Ras Baraka and a few others to come on the airwaves and talk about what they have been able to do. I think perhaps the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, is also trying to do some things. And so it would be great, Ron, if you can help us make that happen, because we need to hear about at least some of the positive steps forward that have been accomplished.
I will talk with Dr. Ron Daniels, who heads up the Institute of the Black World, because he's the good friends of Mayor Baraka and all of that crew, and they're really doing work. As a matter of fact, we even had a couple of years ago, we had a meeting in Newark, and I think he talks to him regularly. And they're even talking about the possibility of something that they do every 4 years, when they do a reflection of the past and the future around the political scene and whatnot. And I've been there, so I'm more than glad and willing to talk with Ron and see if we can utilize those resources. Also, Joni, if you would allow me, there's going to be a reflection. It's Friday evening at 7:00 at Shiloh Baptist Church, where they're going to be talking about the first 100 days of the Orange Man and its impact on communities of color around the law enforcement, the deportations, and the whole 9 yards. This man has really created a crisis in our community, not just in terms of the human crisis, but also a constitutional crisis, because he's doing any and everything he wants to do, even disregarding the decisions from the courts and all, which I'm not surprised, because see, a criminal will do any and everything he or she needs to do in order to get their point across, and he's proven that that's how he operates.
So that's this Friday, the same.
Yes, ma'am. This Friday, 7:00 at Shiloh Baptist Church.
And our own Julian Malveaux will be part of that. And,
that's exactly right.
Very, very important. And I think it's also Ron Daniels' birthday coming up.
That's exactly right. Yeah, his birthday coming up, It's unfortunate. We all get older, but,
we get wiser. We get wiser. But now, so Ron Hampton, in a few minutes, we do have some time left. But I really want you to focus in on, and I can't say it as hopefully as clearly as you can, but there are some frightening reimagining that this president is doing with Project 2025. I've read some of it, I've heard some of it, and I know our comrade who's on tomorrow, Tuesdays at 9 a.m., but Freeman has discussed it. What they are talking about doing with the police, they have it all written out, so things would become much, much, much worse. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're focusing on trying to do this in the District of Columbia as a model. So can you just share some of the, I hate to say some of the bad things, but we need to know how frightening.
We do, Joni. You're absolutely right. I was privy to a meeting where over in Southeast at the Anacostia Coordinating Committee, where this interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia attended, and he wasn't bashful or shy about saying what his political views were and who appointed him and what he plans on doing. But one thing I will say to you is that the people in Southeast confronted him, and they told him, and they talked to him, and they wouldn't allow him to say that and then leave without being confronted and told exact challenge. He was challenged by them because they're talking about, for example, we have some youth crime in the city like they do in other places. He's talking about locking youth up. He's talking about giving them more serious charges. He's talking about also moving them over from the district to the federal court. He was talking about they even had a title of this thing that they're talking about called "Make DC Safe Again." Shit, it's already safe. We've been experiencing the most one of the most significant decreases in violent crime in about 3 decades. So, but what they're talking about is they're actually targeting the black folk in this community, because when the police start locking up people like they've been locking up all along, they're locking up black people. They're not locking up white people.
That's correct.
They're not going over on 8th Street or up in Georgetown locking up people. They're locking them up down on U Street. And sometimes because of the issues that young people are having and other folk are having, we get involved in a crazy behavior. And then that's giving them justification to be talking this crazy stuff that they're talking about doing. And they wanna have they talking about developing or initiating rather a task force that's gonna work along with our police department to do all of this. And even though the mayor's response was, they need the parks, the federal parks and other things cleaned up, but that's not what they're talking about doing. They ain't talking about cleaning up federal parks. They're not talking about pulling the trash off the mall. They're talking about locking up people. That's what they're talking about doing. And they want to do it in a way that it won't be any question. And I'm just a strong believer in you don't give the police any more power than they need. They already have enough power to do what it is that they do. They need to be doing it with the community. And the kind of things that this man is talking about, and the orange man and those Congress people that happen to come here from other places where they can't do the kind of things that they would even heap on us. They're talking about they didn't have conversations with the people here in Washington, D.C. They didn't have a conversation with our mayor and our elected leaders. They're doing it because they can do it. What they can really do for us is allow us to have statehood. That's what they really need to do for us, and then we don't have to be bothered with them.
Absolutely.
But that's not what's happening. So anything that would include weaponizing the police, we don't need. And that's exactly what they're talking about. We don't need any more of that. The district went through that period, and it wasn't, I remember being on the department and Ike Forward, who was the chief of police during my tenure, along with some other guys, they talked about the impact of all of those kind of things. And what happens is it backs up the court, it backs up the detention facility, it backs up a whole lot of stuff. And we had Lawton then. Now the more serious crime individuals get sent to the Bureau of Prison. But it still backs up our system in terms of the DC jail and the other facility over there. So that's not what we need. But and these people ain't giving us what we need now. This ain't about what we really need. This is about what they need. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's frightening because their vision of taking over Washington, D.C. is very, very frightening. That's why we have to stick together and organize. And one of the things I'm seeing and I'm hearing is the increase in the police all over the place, particularly in east of the river, but where I am, I'm seeing all of a sudden a lot more police everywhere you turn.
Yeah, we're seeing they're much more visible. That was also part of the mayor's thing and the police chief strategy, because it's getting to be summertime and it's warm, so they have more visibility. They've even created this unit that is going to be out there, particularly paying attention to youth behavior and all that. I hope that, again, that's where this whole thing about reimagining comes to. There's going to be no young people or civilians that's involved in this. Those are police officers assigned to those things. And you know, and police get heavy-handed sometimes. They get start doing things because they think that that's because it's all right because it's in the name of quote unquote cleaning up the community. No, that's not what we need. And the other part of it is that those were the kind of things that the interim U.S. attorney and the Orange Man and them were talking about in terms of what they think that what they want to see in the city rather than what the city needs and the kind of things that are going on. So some of that is a result of attempting to address it. And I mean, I commend the chief and the mayor for them to want to address it. But if you're going to address it, don't address it and hurt the people in the process of doing it. That I just think that's the wrong lick.
Right. And Ron, one of the things, and you were there last Wednesday night when we had the DC Emancipation Day Speak Out.
Yes, ma'am.
You spoke out. And in the beginning of the program, we had C.R. Gibbs, our esteemed historian, talking about the history of Washington, D.C. before emancipation, going back into the 1700s, up until past the Civil War. And what he talked about was the cruelty among the racism in the city, but also specifically the police. And he made the connection between the police brutality that took place right here in Washington, D.C. in the 1700s and the 1800s. And he said, C.R. Gibbs said, you can still see it today. The brutality. And many of us know people who've been killed by the police. My dear friend, son was killed. And so we're still experiencing the horrors that existed during slavery times. And that just means we have not yet achieved a true change in this system, in this country, and in this city. And until we do that, none of us will be safe. None of us are free until all of us are free. So we have to remember that the police brutality, I want to give a shout out to Harriet's Wildest Dreams and the other organizations who are fighting and very concerned about what's happening in the police. We have to keep this as a center issue as we move forward during these days of the Orange Man, because he definitely has a goal of making things much, much worse. We cannot let that happen. And we have to look much more to reimagining a world and a city and a country where the police wouldn't be abusing people, killing people, harassing people, but we would have a balanced system of support for people in need. And so, Ron, you have 2 minutes for your final comments today.
And I agree with you 250%, Joni, and we had to work on it. That's why it's not just about education, it's also about organizing. You know, there's so many quotes and things, but I remember the one by A. Philip Randolph when he went to visit with Roosevelt, and Roosevelt told him, said, you know, I agree, all of these things need to get done. And he said, well, make me. And Randolph talked about organize. And that's what we need to do. And be fearless. Don't, you know, they do some of these things because they are frightening, but we cannot allow that to freeze us and not do what it is that we need to do. We need the courage to do it. And we do have the courage. There's so many examples of us standing up and pushing back on these people. And we just need to do it and show up. That's it.
Absolutely. Right? I'm glad you mentioned.
Joni, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I love you.
I love you too. So I'm glad you mentioned A. Philip Randolph, of course, a leader in the labor movement, but also talked about the March on Washington with President Roosevelt decades before it happened. But I would encourage each and every one of you, especially the young people, the next time you're in Union Station, go and find his statue and read. And Ron Hampton just mentioned some of it, but basically, I wish I had it at the top of my head, but read it. And it says, unless we were organized, we're never going to make progress. The founder of the sleeping car porters. And someday we'll talk about the women, the Black women in the sleeping car porters.
That's right.
But right now, I want to thank you so much, Ron Hampton, for joining us. And thank you for all the years that you've been right here with us on PFW. I know it's going to be a wonderful gathering this Friday with Ron Daniels, and we'll be thinking of you as we celebrate our 48th anniversary of WPFW. Thank you to our new engineer for the day, Robert. I don't know if we go out any music, but stay tuned for PFW throughout the day. Again, at 2 p.m., a very special show with Dr. Watkins talking about a special event. You'll be hearing from Black farmers, the lifting up of celebration of Black women, and much, much more. That's 2 p.m. today. Stay well, everybody, and keep up the fight.
And they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel for each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. Now I swear your salvation isn't too hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We've got to join together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that every soul who's suffering will know that we're not alone. Oh, none of us are free. None of us are free, y'all. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. If you just look around you, you're gonna see what I say. 'Cause the world is getting smaller. And it's time for us all to realize that the truth is shining
WPFW
bright.
presents Still We Rise, our 48th anniversary celebration on Friday, April 25th, 7 to 11 p.m. at Martin's Crosswinds in Greenbelt. Entertainment includes Navasha Daya and more. That's Still We Rise, WPFW's 48th anniversary celebration. Details at WPFWFM.org.
Are you in the process of writing or updating your will, trust, or estate plan? We invite you to consider adding WPFW as a beneficiary through a charitable bequest. Bequests can take many forms and are usually the largest and most impactful gift a donor will ever make. Your bequest will help to ensure the programming WPFW has provided for almost 50 years will continue into the future. More info available by email at plannedgiving@wpfw.org or by phone at 202-588-0999, extension 344. Or you can let us know you've already included PFW in your plans through those same channels so we can add your name to our growing list of legacy listeners. We are listener supported. We are Jazz and Justice. And because of your support, we are WP